Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're at 5th edition. And we're going to talk about Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley, and the Spyron drop. All right, so let's talk about this. All right. So basically, the Spyron drop is a new thing that you can do that I am creating when someone criticals a monster, okay? And it can be done with a melee attack or a spell attack. And so basically what will happen, so I'm going to tell you what it is, and then I'm going to tell you what inspired it. All right. So one of your player characters hits a critical, right? Now you could say, hey, you just did a critical. You can roll double damage, right? Just like it says in the book, right? So if you're going to roll 2d6, you roll your 2d6, and then you get to roll your 2d6 again. Right? Yay, critical. Criticals are really exciting, right? It's one of the most exciting parts of Dungeons & Dragons, right? Critical hit, right? So you've earned your critical hit, but you get a choice. You could keep your critical as standard default and get your double damage, or you can opt for a Spyron drop. And you're like, wait, what's a Spyron? And the player character is going to be like, what's a Spyron drop? Well, here's what a Spyron drop is, player character. I, the Dungeon Master, am offering you another option. You can forgo rolling your damage, right? So what you do is you're going to accept the Spyron drop, okay? And what that initiates is another roll. Now, what are you going to roll? I'm going to name a die type. It will be a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12, or a D20. When I say the die type, you will pick up 2 dice of that type, okay? And you will roll those 2 dice. If you max the number on those 2 dice, so if I say D6 and you get a 6 and a 6, you have succeeded in your Spyron drop. And what happens is this monster, this creature, this foe that you are fighting will be dead immediately. No hit points. It cuts through all the hit points, and it just drops the creature, right? And this can be used for any and all creatures, and I'll tell you how. So you're saying, hey, if you succeed in your Spyron drop, I will name a die type, D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, or D20. You will pick up 2 of those dice. If I say D10, you'll pick up a D10 and a D10. You'll roll them. If you get a 0 and a 0, you have maxed the number and you have succeeded in the Spyron drop. And that means that the creature, the foe, the entity, the character, the non-player character you're fighting is simply dead. It cuts through all the hit points and the creature is dead. Right? It's slain. All right? and that's the only option. This is only to slay it, right? Like, this is not to knock it out or anything, to take it to 0 hit points and take it captive. This slays the creature, okay? If you roll 2 numbers that are not both max on that die, you get nothing. No damage is dealt. You have a critical right now. You have earned the right to roll double damage, right? You can do that right now, or you can opt for a Spyron drop, right? Now, why would you... Okay, so that's the Spyron drop. And you could just extend this to... And also, as a Dungeon Master, you don't have to extend this on every critical. You could just extend it when you want to, right? Like, and say, hey, I'm offering you a Spyron drop on it. Do you want it? And by the way, if you have an 80 hit point non-player character who's fresh, you could say, okay, I'm going to say D6 or D8. If they're running against an ancient red dragon, you're going to say a D20, right? And what that means is they need to roll a double 20. The odds in that are 1 in 400. Okay? So, and that's a tale you tell, right? Like, we came across, and that's the thing I love about the Spyron drop is it can create these super dramatic moments in Dungeons & Dragons, right? You could tell the story. It's like I was a paladin and we all came up onto a crested hill and, and we saw this, red dragon swooping down from the valley. And I leapt off of the of the hill and successfully hit. And then I did a Spyron drop and I rolled 20 and a 20, and I took out an ancient red dragon with 1 strike. It was dead. Right? Yeah, that's a cool story to tell. Right? And that's why we play Dungeons & Dragons. Tell cool stories, right? So, which is changing. We're changing the structure of cool. Like, that is starting to change, but I think it's exciting, right? So why would we introduce the Spyron drop? I'll tell you why. Tyron Woodley, all right? So I'm very blessed. I have this friend, my UFC friend, invites me over for UFC, right? And it's really fun. Me and my son go, And I don't know if you know how the UFC works, but I know how it works now because I've been watching it for like a year and a half. And what happens is once a month they have a big card. They put all their best fighters that they currently have active into one card, and or a nice subset of their best fighters, and they make a really cool, exciting fight night, right? Now this costs like $60 to $100 depending on what you get with the package, and and my friend buys this every month and invites us. It's like, hey, show up. So we're very lucky. We never have to pay, but we get to see these UFC fights, which are like $60 to $100, and we just get to watch them for free, which is awesome, right? Now, once you've seen UFC, it's hard to watch boxing. I can barely even consider boxing a sport anymore after having seen how brutal UFC is comparatively, right? But boxing is really interesting because it's no longer functions as a sport, but it does function as a spectacle exhibition, right? And so there was a spectacle exhibition last night. So I roll over to my friend's house, and he's like, yeah, we'll see what happens. I know you wanted to, I'm very excited about these YouTubers fighting, right? Like, because I'm a YouTuber, right? So of course I want to see a YouTuber box a UFC champion. Yeah, of course, right? Now currently the fight is Jake Paul, 24-year-old King Titan of YouTube, right, versus 39-year-old Tyron Woodley, retired, fading UFC champion, right? And by the way, this UFC champion, who's used to being able to take people to the ground and kick, now has to fight like a boxer, right? So you have this real professional, right, who's going to fight a YouTuber, right? Not a real boxer, but just a YouTuber, right? Like, very, very, but the YouTuber's 24 and Tyron Woodley is 39, right? So it's a really exciting fight, right? So my friend invites me over and is like, yeah, this might be like, it might go all the rounds. Last time they did this, they danced around and it was barely a fight, but let's see what happens, right? So we had a great night. I brought some snacks and we just talked and, watched the fights, and, it wasn't like a UFC fight because they're just, dancing around boxing. It's not the same thing. But when you get to that spectacle, right? And actually there was I will say this, there was an NFL player who was fighting an NFL veteran, right? Had been in the NFL for a while. Now he's retired, fighting a basketball player who's now retired. And again, it was just this spectacle exhibition. Really cool, really exciting, right? I loved it. It was really cool and exciting, right? But when we get to the Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight, so these guys go at it and they start knocking each other around. And they're taking it seriously. They're legit fighting each other. But they're also doing a lot of clenching where they're like, coming together and hugging and like that. And no less than 30 times. Like the referee had to separate them. It's like, hey, we need a fight here, right? But because they both wanted to win. They wanted to knock the other guy out. And so they were throwing some big bombs and like, it was a scrap, man. I was like, wow, So I told my buddy, I was like, I'm calling that Jake Paul will knock this guy out in the 5th round. I was wrong. He knocked him out in the 6th round. But I will tell you right now, and this, I really didn't get it until I saw a lot of these UFC fights, but you go to see it happen, and boy, did it happen, right? So Jake Paul's like, these guys are knocking each other around for 5 rounds. They go into the 6th, right? And Jake Paul's like, this has been going on for a long time. There's only 8 rounds in the fight. He's got to do something. People came to see a real fight, right? They don't want some nonsense where, it's wins by decision, right? So he starts, doing his thing, and he comes in and he comes in and he approaches Tyron Woodley, right? Comes in for the punch, right? And he looks down at his body, looks down at his ribs, like, I'm about to punch you in your ribs so hard it's going to make your whole body shake, right? And when you've seen enough UFC and see enough boxing, that a solid punch to rib, it can rock you. Like, it can really, it's a body hit, but it can really shake you up, right? And so Tyron Woodley's like, oh, I don't want to get, knocked in my rib. And he sees Jake Paul just looking at his ribs like, like spare ribs, like he's going to, just eat them up, right? And so he brings his hand down to block the punch, right? And immediately Jake Paul just like rockets this bold punch, right? And does an overhand power punch directly to the point, an inch to forward from your ear, and just blasts him in the face. Like, just lands a absolute monster punch right to the face. I have never seen this in any UFC, any boxing match. Tyron Woodley's body dropped like a sack of lumber. Like, just, the commentator said, they put him in airplane mode. His body was not connected to his mind. He fell like a sack of bricks. Like, it was crazy, and you should go see it. There's a nice, actually, I'll put it right down below. There's a highlight reel of this, right? And you could see it, and his body just goes limp, and he just falls face forward onto the mat, and it's like, and the referee ran up and said, man down, we need a doctor. Like, he rocked him, ended him. Like, it was just bang, drop, done, right? And of course, we're in the, me and my friend just in the living room, like, yeah, and there's this, we saw it, we saw what everybody came here to see, right? A definitive ending, right? Like, just a bone breaker, like, he just put that guy out, like, just put his lights out, right? It was, and Tyron Woodley, they had to, like, bring him up with smelling salts. Like, Jake Paul ended him, right? Like, it's like, this is a YouTuber taking down a professional fighter, right? And you're there for it, right? And that's what you want to, create that kind of drama in your Dungeons & Dragons game. You want to have an opportunity to see this spectacle of exhibition, right? The spectacle exhibition. You want to have that exciting, raw moment of excitement and talent, and, it's all there, right? So I suggest to you to introduce the Spyron drop. I think it's going to work great, and you should add to your game immediately. What do you think? Do you have your own version of the Spyron drop? Or are you like, no, Scott, you cannot make a situation where a paladin can one-shot, a legendary, can one-shot an ancient red dragon, with one shot. You can't allow that. You can't do that, Scott. Or do you think, yeah, it's cool. You should definitely have the possibility to take a risk and drop something the way Jake Paul dropped Tyron Woodley. And so I call it the Spyron drop because it's inspired by Tyron. And by the way, Tyron is not a bad fighter. In fact, like, this fight was about to be canceled because Tyson Fury's brother was like, oh, I can't make it. I got injured or whatever. Right. And Tyron Woodley came in and, and filled the slot. And it was a great fight. And we had a blast. Right. So you should definitely check this out. And consider putting the Spyron drop into your game. That's my opinion. What do you think? Are you going to use the Spyron drop? I'd love to hear it. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.